Hi, this is Don Loyd, and I'm here today with Shannon Bart. Shannon is a very interesting person, and she has a very interesting story. In fact, it is so interesting that I wrote about it, and I'd like for you to read it. You can read her story at realcashflow.net, then click on articles, and then click on 4 Steps to Greatness. If there's a lady that ever exhibited greatness, it is, in my opinion, Shannon. Shannon, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Don, for having me. I'm happy to be here.
You are one of my favorite people.
Feelings mutual.
Okay. Today, I want to talk to you about personal responsibility. How would you define personal responsibility? Now, I know that it's kind of difficult to put into one sentence, and I know there's many different aspects of it, but as a generalization, the big picture kind of thing, how would you define personal responsibility?
You know, Donna, I like to think of personal responsibility in terms of taking personal control over your life. You know, I want to add a positive spin to it. I think when a lot of people think of responsibility and taking personal responsibility, they view that as a negative thing. And my perspective really is that if you can take personal responsibility, it helps give you control back over your life, over your choices, actions, and about just the situations that you're in with your relationships, business, work, career, family, etc.
Well, how does that work out in our culture? How does, what are the fruit of taking responsibility or lack of taking personal responsibility? How does that work out in our culture and our social environment?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question. I'm not sure I defined it very well when you asked me, so it just occurred to me. And what I mean by personal control is being able to see how you're contributing to whatever situation you're in your life. And our culture and social environment, it's really interesting. We've become a culture where it's really easy to blame things on someone else, on the government, on our situations, on our childhood, on the other people in our lives, and decide that we're a victim and that, we can't get out of things because it's just how we've been raised or it's what we've learned. And so, our culture doesn't engender or support personal responsibility, unfortunately. Now, you and I have had conversations about, really having a purpose in life and serving other people. And so I want to make a distinction or talk about a little bit how the two go together, how personal responsibility and taking control over your own life and having a purpose go together. I really believe that people who can take personal control and understand that their choices create their lives and their situations are better able to have purpose and serve other people in a positive way when they do that. They're more fulfilled, they're more content, joyful, happy, all of those things, and they have more to give. It's kind of the concept of when your cup is empty or half empty, how do you see it as half empty or half full? Well, sometimes we end up feeling like we have nothing left to give because we're giving to everybody else, but we're doing that in the wrong ways. We're selling out and doing what we think we're supposed to be doing versus really finding what serves our own needs and fulfills us. And when we do that, then we're more able to give to other people as well.
Well, do you think that not accepting personal responsibility or accepting it, either one, is a learned behavior, or do you think that we have the genes in us already that makes us reject personal responsibility?
I think it's a learned behavior. Honestly, there might be some geneticists who disagree with me on that, but I think everybody is capable of, at some point, standing up in their life and saying, I want something different, I want something better, and I'm doing things that keep me stuck where I am, and the flip side of that is I can do things to get me out of it and to be where I want to be.
Okay. Well, you kind of briefly tied the lack of personal responsibility and victimhood together. Do you see a correlation between those who won't take personal responsibility and those who live out their life as a victim?
Absolutely, absolutely. I know that some people may find that offensive or might find that difficult to swallow, but I think that I guess I believe that at some point, like I said, everybody is capable of saying, I can make a different choice. And when you're not making choices, when you're deciding not to do anything or that you can't do anything, you're behaving in the role of a victim and acting as a victim. And, that has so many psychological and actually physical ramifications to just allowing whatever happens to you happen, to letting other people make choices for you, to feeling like or to behaving as though your only options are what everybody else expects of you. And it's real common for those people to feel like victims and to become kind of in that victimization, and they tend to be unhappy. And so, when you can step out and say, I can make a different choice and have some control over my life, just by virtue of doing that, you're not a victim anymore.
Okay. You know what? Some people might not know about you, and I might as well tell them now. Shannon does have a master's degree from Arizona State University in the field of psychology, and she's a recognized psychologist. I have a question for you.
Okay.
Are men or women more likely to place blame on others or other things for their failures? Or is it just kind of a mixed bag and it's kind of 50-50? I guess what I'm asking, Shannon, are men or women more likely to place blame on other things for their failures?
I really think that, well, first of all, I just want to say that some people might be offended at saying I'm a psychologist because I just have a master's degree. But so therapist, counselor, and then coach. But so I don't mean to correct you, but
I will call you out.
I don't want to get in trouble with anybody. Okay, so your question, men or women? I think sometimes there is a perception that women are more likely to do that. I think in actuality they are equally as likely to end up feeling or being a victim, perhaps for different things or for different reasons. But in general, I think men and women are probably equally likely to do that, unfortunately.
Well, that raised an interesting question, I think. What are some things that keep the folk away from taking responsibilities?
Feeling powerless, really. And again, that's where I get to taking control. People get so bogged down by their situations, by their finances or their families and expectations that they think they have.
Do you find a lack of income or social status has anything to do with it? Is there any bearing in that regard?
Absolutely. I think people, it's much harder for people, it seems to be much harder for people to kind of crawl out of the lack of financial standing or, being struggling with paying bills and financial, resources. I do think there are people who have a lot of financial resources who are victims as well. They're almost victims of having to maintain that lifestyle or of letting their bosses down or of their spouses down or of, I know there are some women who, end up in marriages where they live a great social standing, but perhaps they're not happy with their relationships or their, or other things, but they don't know how to make a change because they would have to make a significant change in their social status and financial status, and that's a real big challenge.
Okay. Well, I'm sure there's various reasons for people to blame others. I think a lot of it has to do with our culture. I think that we are taught to place blame on someone else, and therefore we're not so bad if we fail because it's somebody else's fault. Mm-hmm. But I'm a real big believer, as you know, I'm a real big believer in people just fessing up and saying, okay, I blew it. And in fact, I told you one time that I probably have more failures than anybody else. Anybody else that I know, I have a lot of character glitches.
Well, you certainly did tell me that. And of course, you're also one of the most successful people I know. So your idea that you learn the most from your failures, I think you're a good example of that.
The thing I wanted to point out was that the fact that people fail is not the most important thing in life. Because I believe that it's okay to fail. In fact, I give you permission to fail.
Oh, thank you.
If I'm in a position to give you that authority.
Absolutely.
But it's okay to fail. The important thing is how you handle the failures. When I fail, and as I said, I failed probably more than anybody else in this building. When I fail, it gives me an opportunity to look at myself honestly and say, that wasn't like me. I need to do this, and this to correct that situation. And one thing that I practice is I don't worry about tomorrow. I just worry about what I do today. My goal is to do okay today. And if I fail today, I think that that's okay. I take an honest look at myself. I make corrections. And as long as I have done the best I can today, that's what I'm looking for.
Well,
go ahead.
No, the bonus of looking at just today is, it's the difference between, in parenting they talk about talking to your children about being a bad kid versus having done something bad. And so if you look at just today and how did I do today, and well, maybe I didn't do so great today, that's only about today. That's not about you. It's only about today. And tomorrow you have a new chance. And the next day you have a new chance. And so
I think, and in fact we've never talked about this, but I think I just had this thought, this great, wonderful thought.
Well, great.
I think that it's possible. It might be possible that we would be much happier if we would adopt some characteristics of our dogs, our pet dogs, because a dog can screw up in the moment, and then the next moment he's okay.
Exactly.
And so we ought to view ourselves that way maybe. Okay, I screwed up, but hey, that's not the end of the world. Tomorrow I'm going to do better, or I'm going to do better this afternoon.
Right.
And
actually, I think that the beauty of, you talk about taking responsibility for poor choices. We've had that conversation. And that's the best time to take responsibility because it's very freeing to just say, I goofed. I made a mistake. And, if you don't do that, then it kind of it rests on your shoulders and you feel heavy and you can feel it and it's always kind of in the room with you. And if you can just be out with it and say, I made a mistake, I goofed up, this is not how I wanted it to be, whatever that means, then it frees you from the burden of that mistake and you can move on, you can learn from it, you can move on and decide that you're not going to do it again.
What we're really talking about here is taking the bulls by the horns and facing our challenges expectantly. I believe we ought to live our life expectantly. I wake up each day thinking, man, it's a great day. And guess what? It's a great day.
It's a great day.
People kind of laugh at me sometimes because I'm always up. But let me tell you, I do have my down times.
Yes.
I do.
Well, we all do.
I'm human.
That's normal.
I'm human, so I have my down times. But I really believe how we take on the day as our choice, how we view the day as our choice. The worst day is a good day.
Right.
I was in the hospital 3 or 4 years ago, and some people would say that was the worst day because I was laying on the table and the doctor said, Don, you could be dead within minutes. To some people, that could be the most terrible thing that ever happened to them. I didn't view it that way. I viewed it, hey, here's another opportunity. And, of course, you and I have had some lengthy talks about that.
Yeah.
But I think I think everyone needs to really just take the bulls by the horns, face their challenges, do the best they can, and I think they need to set, and you might want to comment on this, I think everybody needs to set some realistic goals with their personal lives. I think they need to write them down because until you write them down, Shannon, they aren't real.
They aren't real.
You don't see them and they don't exist. And then break that down to daily activity and then really focus on that daily activity. Don't worry about the overall goal so much as it is doing what it takes today to get through the day. I wrote a book on parenting several years ago. It was called The Art of Parenting. Did I ever tell you that?
You did tell me that.
And when my daughter became 14, I picked up all the books
and threw away.
Took them to the dump because the rules didn't apply anymore. And now when anybody asks me, what do I do with my kid, I say, make it through the day. Just get through the day without killing them.
You know, actually, that story is a really great point about, I think some people get stuck in writing down their goals, feeling like they're set in stone. And it's really important to remember that you can change your goals. Your goals can change at any time, depending on, just sometimes you realize it's not really what you wanted in the first place, or you just change your mind, want to do something different. And along the same lines with goals, I like to encourage people to set long-term goals, so to have a vision of what they want to create in their life. And a lot of times in coaching, we do that. We take our clients and say, okay, I want you to just sit back and close your eyes and visualize this area of your life exactly the way you want it to be. And then from that picture, you can kind of work backwards and say, okay, what steps do you need to take to get you to that place, or at least to a place that's as close as possible to that. And so long-term goals and short-term goals, and write them down, but also know and remember that you can change your goal. If the picture changes, it changes. That's okay. That's okay, and you have to remember that that's okay.
That's a very good point.
Thank you.
And just add one little thought to it. I think it's important. Well, you know that I'm a coach to some folk, and I want them to visualize certain things. And I really believe that if a person wants to take personal responsibility and see themselves in a different light, I think it's important after they've got their goals down and they've got their activity broken down to a daily activity. I think it's important that they take time every day and just gear down, get relaxed, and go through a process of visualization. I think they should see what it is they want to be, because I think that can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And if they see themselves as a certain way, and I'm going to use a very kind of a flippant thing almost here, a flippant example here. If one wants to be a millionaire, he visualizes himself as a millionaire. So when he gets a check for $500,000, he doesn't wet his pants.
Right.
He doesn't go berserk and say, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
He says, of course.
He already knows.
He already knows. He says, of course I got a check for $500,000. I'm a millionaire. That's what millionaires do. Right. And that's kind of a flippant example. But I think people need to see what they visualize themselves the way they want to be, and support that with positive self-talk, where they make statements about themselves in a very positive way. But anyway, that's just a little thing of mine. Did you have anything that you want to add to that?
I disagree. I just agree is what I said. I don't want it to be heard as disagree. I like to say, act as though you're who you want to be, or live your life as though it is the way you want it to be. And that's something else that we try to encourage is, just really living as best you can the way you want your life to be.
Okay, now I have a very important question here. How do you think a person's life would change if they could get to the place where they accept the responsibility for their actions and for their choices?
Well, I think, and I want to back up just a second since you asked that question and kind of draw, we've been talking a little bit about two things, and personal responsibility and living the life that you want and creating what you want in your life. And so I want to make sure everybody understands how those two things go together. Really taking personal responsibility and knowing what you're doing to contribute to a bad situation, if you perceive it that way, or to a situation or environment that's not the way you want it to be, helps you identify what you can do to change it. And so as you change it and make positive changes towards living the life that you want, you're taking personal responsibility. How does a person's life change if they expect responsibility? It's interesting. We've talked about before that a lot of times people have one area or maybe two where they think things could be better, and so what I've seen is that when people take responsibility or personal control or however you want to define it or term it in that one area, then even the areas of their life that they already thought were pretty okay improve. So being able to do this and do this consistently and in every area of your life tends to improve every area of your life, and people live more joyful, fulfilled, peaceful, great lives in general in every area of their life.
Okay, very good. You know, as a real estate investor, and many of the people that I coach in that area. A person who takes personal responsibility is the person who does his or her due diligence, makes a choice, and then deals with the choice. If it's a good choice, they rejoice, and they live with it. If they make a bad choice, or maybe it's not even a bad choice. Maybe that it made sense at the time, but the economy changed, or we went into a recession, or a volcano blew up, or there was an earthquake that destroyed half the city, or whatever. Rather than becoming overly discouraged with that, they take responsibility and they say, well, there's no one to blame here, so I'll just make the best I can. One of the things that I try to do personally is if I make a mistake or an error or a bad choice or whatever it happens to be, and it comes back to bite me, I just, rather than get all upset about it, I say, okay, I got served up a lemon. How can I sell lemonade?
Right.
And I try to turn the bad into good because I think that's a very important thing to do. And I think that as people look at their own personal situation, whether it be a marital situation or a family situation or an abusive situation, and by the way, as a little footnote, if we have anybody here in an abusive situation, my advice is to get out of that situation. Don't think that he or she will change, because they won't. Anyway, that's my own personal.
Well, and I want to add to that in many communities there are organizations that can help you with that situation.
But anyway, once you realize what it is that you've done, just say, okay, this is it. I will do the best I can with what I have, and I'll be successful with what I have.
Well, and that's a really important distinction that you make. Taking personal responsibility for your choices is not about placing blame on you. In fact, it's almost about removing blame. You know, when people are in that victim role, whether they're intentionally doing it or not, or realize it or not, there's a lot of blaming going on. Well, it's because of that person or this person or that situation. And when you take control over your own life and your own choices, and you do, as you say, your due diligence, and you make a choice based on all the information you can gather, and you make the best choice you can, then even if it doesn't work out, it's not about placing blame on yourself or anybody else. It's just about saying, well, that didn't work. I'm going to try something else, and I'm going to try something that maybe will work better for me. So I love that distinction that you make about not blaming anybody. You mentioned that.
Okay, well, let's suppose that we have some people listening to this that need some help. Where can people go to get some help?
Well, in most communities, there are lots of different agencies that will provide help for people. It kind of depends on, whether you're looking for counseling or coaching or something of that nature. I love the idea of coaching, not necessarily better than counseling, but coaching because it's a real positive, action-oriented support relationship. And you can find coaches in most places. In fact, Don, I'm not sure that a lot of people who know that you do coaching for investing in real estate information and so forth. So you can get online and look for coaching agencies. You can look in the phone book and see if there are coaching agencies. You can give me a call. I have my business line is area code 541-617-8446. You can also reach me at beingwellcoach@yahoo.com, and that's beingwellcoach@yahoo.com. And I would be happy to either do, just an initial complimentary consultation or help you find somebody else who can be more helpful.
Shannon, you're a delightful person.
You are too, Don. I've so enjoyed our time together.
Yes, absolutely. And I hope everyone listening to this will take personal responsibility for themselves and take charge of their own life.
Absolutely.
Because I truly believe God has a plan for each of us, and it's just a matter of finding that plan and living out that plan. I believe that when we find God's plan for us and we start living that plan freely and voluntarily, we really come to a place where we have a fulfilled life, a contented life, and I think that would solve a lot of ills in our culture.
Mm-hmm.
Shannon, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Don.